Hi guys, welcome to the concluding video on how to make a corset, and this is going to be the sewing and finishing part of this tutorial. If you haven't seen the part 1, do check the description box or the comment section for the part 1 on how to draft the pattern for this tutorial. Now, as you can see, I have cut my pattern on my fabric and I also left seam allowances. Now, as you can see, I left half-inch seam allowance at the top so as to turn with lining. I also left half-inch seam allowance at the sides so as to join with the center back. And as you can see, I left no seam allowance at the zip part because my zip allowance is already there. Now, mind you, I cut out 2 of my fabric, 2 of my lining for each of these pieces. Now for the front pattern, these are the places you will leave your seam allowances. Leave seam allowance at the top for turning with lining at the sides also, and also do the same for your center front piece. Now this is what my center front looks like. As you can see, it is cut on fold, and I also cut out my fabric on fold and also my lining piece. And for the side front, I cut out 2 of my fabric and also 2 of my lining. And now for these little ones, you can see I left half-inch seam allowance all around them, and I cut out 2 of my fabric for each piece, 2 of fusible interfacing. In my country, it is called soft wadding. You can also use hard wadding. And I also cut out 2 of my lining for each piece, as you can see. And here is the neckline part, which is the yoke part, and here is my front, and this is my back. And as you can see, I left half-inch at the top, at the side, and also at the bottom, and I also did the same for the front part. Now this is very important. If your illusion net stretches this way, cut off all the half-inch seam allowance you left at the top and also at the bottom. I just left the seam allowances to show you guys where to leave your seam allowances, okay? So now remember we have a dart around this part, and what you're going to do is you're going to just fold it over like this and pin. Fold the middle line like this and pin. Now this is what the front part looks like. I cut 2 pieces of the illusion net for the front and also 2 pieces for the illusion net of the back. Now because I want to have a lace-up back or a rope at the back of my corset, get the zip part of your pattern or fabric. Now this is what you're going to do. On the zip line, this zip line of your pattern, what you're going to do is at the top, you're going to take 2 inches or 3.5 or 2.5, depending on how deep you want your opening to be. And at the bottom, take 1/2 inch. Now what you're going to do is you're going to connect your 1/2 inch to the 2.5 or 3 inches or whatever you used, and you're just going to connect it like this. Now you're just going to cut this off. Now if you want to add the zipper to your corset, do not cut this off. Because I want to have a lace-up back, that is why I had to cut this off, okay? Now for the back neckline, which is the yoke part, you also have to do the same. At this part, mark your 2 inches or 3.5 or whatever you used on the lower part, and just connect it all the way to your shoulder line like this and cut. Now it is usually best to iron a fusible interfacing on your fabric and also on your lining. In my country, this fusible interfacing is called hairstay. And I won't be using this because my iron is faulty, and because of the whole quarantine and lockdown-ish, I'm not able to fix it. So moving on, Now we're going to start joining all these pieces together, starting from the back fabric. Now I'm going to join this two together, the center back and the side together like this, and I'm going to stitch by 1/2 inch, and I'm also going to do the same for this other side and also the center back and join by 1/2 inch. And do not forget to do the same to the lining. Now onto the front, we're going to start stitching the center front to the side, and we're going to join the fabrics together like this and stitch by 1/2 inch, and also do the same for this other side. And do not forget to do the same for your lining. Now for these small corset pieces, all you have to do is iron your interfacing on them if you can. And I am going to add 2 and 4 together, place it together and stitch by 1/2 inch like this. Now make sure you do the same for your lining and also this other piece. And now for number 1 and 3, place them on your interfacing and iron them if you can. And what you're going to do is place it on 2 and 4 and stitch by 1/2 inch at the top like this. And also do the same for your lining pieces. I am going to be making use of this stitch on boning, but you can make use of any boning of your choice. And here is a very thick foam I got from the fabric store, and you can use this to make your own bra cups, or you can use this easily accessible bra cups that are already made, and you can get this anywhere at any fabric store. And this is what I am going to use for this tutorial. Another thing you need is the bra underwire. This is not a necessity. You can decide to skip this. You can get this also from a fabric store, or you can take it out from an old bra you no longer make use of. Now I am just trying to make my stitches, and my sewing machine is not having it at all, but I'm just going to go on and just finish the tutorial however way I can though. So now I just finished joining the sides of the front. Now I am just going on to stitch the bra cups. Do not forget to do the same thing for your linings. And now, as you can see, my bra cups are ready, and we're going to stitch the upper part to it right about now. Now, as you can see, I am done stitching the sides of the fronts together. Now we're going to join the back to the side of the back to the side of the front like this, and you're just going to stitch by the same allowance you left on your fabric, you placed on your fabric. And I'm going to stitch and join it together. And I'm also going to do the same for this other side. And also make sure you do the same on your lining. And now we're going to start placing the cups. All you have to do is match up the seam of the cup to the seam on your fabric. Okay, just match it up, pin it down, and you're just going to start stitching.
Traveling the mountains just to find the loudest tears. We set down by the fire, knowing we could aim higher, but we didn't know that yet.
And as you can see, I am done installing the cups, and the seams match. You have to pay attention to the seams, and also the seams of the cup, they also match. You have to make sure that they match, okay? So the next thing we're going to do right now is we're going to be covering the seam of the cups using this 1.5 inches piece of fabric that I cut out from my fabric. You can also use bias tape to bias the seam of the cup, and this is how you're going to do that. Just place it like this, and you're going to stitch all around the seam of the cup. Now place your bias tape just on top of that seam, and just make sure that you stitch very close to the seam you have on your cup. Just make sure that you do not stitch on the main fabric itself. So I'm just going to make this stitch all around the cup. Now once you're done stitching, you should have this. As you can see, this is what the stitches look like, and as you can see, I have no stitches on the good side of my fabric. Now what you're going to do is you're going to start folding this, double fold it just to cover up the rough edges of your cup. Just fold it in, and you're going to start pinning all around this cup. Now as you pin, you have to make sure that you go in and check from time to time that you have about 0.3 inch from your cup seam, okay? From your cup seam, you have to make sure you have about 0.3 inches as you pin.
Lions roaring in the morning sun.
And we're going to start making our stitches. Now you have to bear in mind that this covering of the cups only consign the main fabric. It does not consign the lining. And this is done so that the underwire can pass through the opening of the biased undercups, and also it adds beauty to the corset on the good side of the fabric. And once you're done stitching, you should have this, and you have to make sure you go on and do the same for the other side of your bra cup, okay? So now moving on, and as you can see, I am done making my stitches, and this is what the outcome looks like. You can see how it adds beauty to the corsets. You can see the stitches on the good side. You can see how it adds beauty to the corset. So now I'm going to start putting in my underwire straight into that hole. And now as you can see, I am done inserting my underwire. You have to make sure that the underwire does not get to the top so that it would obstruct when you're turning with your lining. Now using this 1.5 inch of fabric in width and 15 inches in length, I'm going to stitch good sides together, and this is going to serve as my lace loop.
Searching for a longer day. People feeling like the light has just come. We must never stop the way. Birds jumping and I hear.
Now as you can see, I will be using this safety pin to turn this thing inside out like this.
My name, grasping into life is happy, but it's so insane. We must merely make a strive. Savannah.
Now as you can see, I am done turning everything inside out, and I'm going to be using 3 inches in length for the length of my loops, as you can see, and I'm going to go on and cut as many as I want. And this rope you see right here is going to serve as my lace up rope for my corset. It's about 60 inches in length. And now at this point, we have to start placing in our bonings. Now I have a tutorial, like a whole tutorial on how to make casings for your boning. I showed you 5 ways to make casings for your boning, and you can either make these casings on the good sides of your fabric, or you can make it on the wrong side of your fabric. I'll put the link in the comment section and also in the description box so you can find that tutorial. Now I'm going to go on and start making my boning. I'm not going to make casing for this. I'm just going to sew my boning on the fabric, just like this. I'm going to place it on this side, 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 and everything is going to be on the same. Now to prep your boning, all you have to do is put it through a light like this and use your hand and shape it and give it a rounded shape. This way it will not poke you. And once you're done doing this, make sure that you iron your boning. That way you have a straighter boning to work with. Now what I am going to do is I'm going to stitch on both edges of my boning. That is how I am going to make my stitches.
The birds have just begun. We will always take a stand for the people, for the land. Let's go back to when we were young. For the animals we stand. Let's go back to when trees were swung. Kids across the Savannah, I'm coming home, Savannah.
Now as you can see, I am done stitching my boning on my fabric, and the reason why my boning is up like this is because I wasn't able to iron my boning on my fabric. So once you iron yours, everything is going to look all flat. Now as you can see, I have placed my loops at the edge of my fabric, and we're going to place the loops of at the edge of this fabric together. Now grab your loop and fold it this way. Now you're going to come down by ½ inch from the top of your fabric, and you're just going to put it down on the edge of your fabric like this and pin. Now fold it again and pin just at your hem allowance line. Now you're going to start folding the rest of the loops, and you're going to give space of ½ inch in between all of them, and you're going to keep pinning till you get to the bottom. Now once you are done pinning, you can take this to your sewing machine and stitch the loops down so as to hold them in place. Now place your cup on your lining like this and start stitching on the seam of your cup, just on one side of the cup. And once you're done, do the same for the other cup. Now we're going to start stitching the yoke of the front. Now you need to double the net so that it would be so much more easier to work with, and apart from that, it will keep it stable and firm. Now as you stitch, you have to arrange your net as you go, so you have a much more nicer stitch around the net. Now I am done stitching the neckline of the front, and as you can see, I am using the thread that matches close to the net. Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to fold this seam over like this rough seam. You're going to fold it over like this. Now you're going to make an overlocking stitch right on top of the former stitch you have done before. You can use a zigzag stitch, that is what I am using, or an overlocking stitch. Now just follow what I am doing and you would have a nice project at the end of the day. Now what I am doing is I am just making my zigzag stitch right on top of that edge. Now once you're done stitching, you should have this. Now what you're going to do now is you're going to grab your scissors and you're going to start cutting off that seam just very, very close to the stitch you have on your nets. Very, very close to the stitch. And for the back, what you're going to do is whatever neckline you have, this is what my own neckline is, that is still the same way you're going to go about it. My back illusion net is also doubled, and as you can see, I am just stitching that neckline part, as you can see. Now once you're done stitching, bend the seam over like this and start making your overlocking stitch or zigzag stitch right on that edge all the way down. Now we're going to start cutting off the excess seam, just like we did for the front. And make sure you do the same for the other part of your neckline, depending on the kind of neckline you are using. And now we're going to flip the front neckline inside out, so that this way we would have the rough seam on the inside of the net. Okay? So now we're going to do the same thing for the back, as you can see. Flip the back, so this way the seam will be on the inside. Now what is left is to join the shoulders together, right? Now you're just going to place the good sides of the back to the good sides of the front and join together like this and stitch. Now once you're done stitching, just like we have been doing, fold the seam over and stitch using a zigzag stitch at the edge. And once you're done stitching, cut with your scissors very, very close to the seam, just like this. And this is what you have on. Now place the good sides of your net to the good sides of your fabric. Now I am placing the good side of my back net to the good side of the back of my fabric, and I am just pinning the edges down. Now once you're done, you can go on and pin the cup part of the net to the cup part of the fabric, and also pin the center of the net to the center of the fabric, and also the back of the net to the other back of the fabric. And you can go on your sewing machine and stitch and join it together just to hold it in place. So once you're done, you can attach your lining to it. And now as you can see, I am stitching my net to my fabric.
I want you to show me how to get to know someone like you, someone like you. I want you to know me, 'cause I know then you'll see we could be true. We can be true. I want you to see what I see in us. Something so real, something so real. I want you to see that this is a love that we both feel, that we both feel. And how will we ever know if the love will ever grow without trying, without trying? And how will we ever see if we are meant to be? It's terrifying, it's terrifying.
Once that is done, we're going to start attaching our lining. As you can see, I placed it right on top of the loops, and you're just going to start stitching from bottom of the back all the way up. And as you stitch, you need to be careful of the net. Make sure you get the net out of the way so it doesn't get in your way, or you don't end up stitching on the net and you end up having a rumpled net at the end of the day. So just go slow and steady. Now, as you can see, I am done making the stitches, and I am just going to make notches at the top of the corset like this, just around the curves. Now, once you're done doing this, what you're going to do is start placing the seam on your fabric, this seam, and place it on your lining and start making a top stitch on your lining. Place the seam on your lining and start making a top stitch. Top stitching would help your fabric and your lining lay flatter and much more nicer. I won't be making a top stitch, but what I will do is I'm going to place the cup, this cup, and I'm going to place it on the cup of my fabric, and I'm going to stitch it together. And I will also do the same for the other side of my cup. While stitching, just make sure that your stitch do not show on the good side of your fabric. Now, once you're done, you will see that the whole thing would lay much more flatter, and also make sure you do the same for the other side. Now, if you want this middle part to lay flat, what you're going to do is you're going to attach the seam of your lining to the seam of your fabric right here. Just make sure that everything is straight, and you're just going to attach it using a needle and thread again. Now at this point, you can go on and add sleeves if you have one, and you're going to stitch this just like you have stitched the others. And once you're done making that stitch, measure the back of your corset like this. Now measure that on a folded fabric and add 1 inch for folding at the bottom. And the width is 8 inches, and I'm going to go on my sewing machine and stitch around this. And I left a little bit to turn it out, and as you can see, this is what the fabric is. And I'm just going to place that fabric right here at the back of my corset and stitch it down. Now, using this 2 inches width of fabric, I am going to use this to bias the bottom of my corset, and you don't have to do this the way I am doing it. You can choose to do yours however way you want. Now, as you can see, I am done biasing, and I am just going to add that back covering thing that I said I was going to stitch on my fabric. And here is the finished look, guys. Hope you like this video. Hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Give this video a like, and see you in more videos to come.
We've both been there before. When love shuts the door, it's a losing